It seemed like any other day, or so I thought. I'd stuck to my routine for weeks, trying to ignore the strange feeling that something was off. Rachel had been distant for a while, but I convinced myself it was just work stress. We'd built a life together, and I never thought anything could come between us. But looking back, the signs had been there, small things that only made sense in hindsight. I spent my days lost in thought, driving from place to place, doing errands, going through the motions of daily life. That day was no different, until a simple, unexpected event at a stoplight threw everything into chaos. I was already feeling a bit worn out, but nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time never leads to anything good. I couldn't control it, though. I was waiting at a red light when a car pulled up next to me. The driver motioned for me to roll down my window. "You've got a flat tire," he said. Grateful for the warning, I turned into the Walmart parking lot nearby to check. Sure enough, a screw had punctured the tire, causing a slow but steady leak. Perfect. Now I had to figure out my next move. I decided to head home and buy a jar of that slime. When I returned, I pulled the screw out. Big mistake. Air started hissing out. I screwed it back in and filled up the tire at the gas station in the parking lot. I was only 15 miles from home and kept checking it. If the air got too low, I'd use the slime. About 5 miles from home, I noticed in the side mirror that the tire was getting low. I pulled into a store, but there was no air. It was time to check the slime. I put it in, and green slime oozed out. I guess they call it slime for a reason, but the air stopped hissing. As I was about to get back in the car, a pickup truck pulled up. It was one of those massive ones with huge tires, sitting so high you'd need a ladder to get in. I recognized it. The door opened, and a tall guy with blonde hair, cowboy boots, and a giant belt buckle stepped out. I chuckled to myself, but it didn't last. The passenger door opened, and a beautiful woman with raven hair got out. I definitely knew her. It was Rachel, the woman I'd been married to for 18 years. What the hell? I parked off to the side, and they didn't even notice my car. It was a company car, a small, boxy import, not too noticeable. They walked into the store holding hands, and she was laughing. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't breathe or move. All I could do was stand there like an idiot. Now I remembered where I'd seen this guy before. He worked at the same company as Rachel. She was the office manager at a mental health clinic, and he worked in customer service. I'd seen his truck outside their building. The question was, what was Rachel doing with him? I couldn't remember his name at first, but then it hit me. Jerry Garner. The question now was, why wasn't Rachel at work? I was going to find out. I went back to my car and waited. When they came out of the store carrying coffee cups, he helped her into the truck. They sped off, and I followed at a safe distance. They pulled up to our house, and he drove into the garage. The door closed behind them, and I couldn't see anything else. I sat there for about 30 minutes, but the tire kept nagging at me. I checked it, but if it was low, I couldn't tell. 2 hours later, they left, and as they passed me, I held up a file folder to hide my face. Not that they would have noticed. They were too wrapped up in each other. Rachel didn't leave work until 5, and now it was only 2:30. I had time. First, I had to go inside and see what I could find. At 4, I needed to pick up Toby, and I had no idea what I was going to tell her. Toby was my 15-year-old daughter. I couldn't imagine what I'd find inside, but maybe I'd get some answers. When I entered the house, it was quiet. The only sound was the drip of the faucet I still needed to fix in Toby's bathroom, and the whisper of air from the vents. I looked around but didn't see anything unusual. I checked upstairs. The bed had fresh sheets. My heart sank. I pressed my back against the wall and slid to the floor, feeling numb. There seemed to be only one explanation. I sat there for about 30 minutes, my mind spinning. I couldn't make sense of my thoughts. I felt like I'd been pilled. My stomach growled, and I got up to grab a Sprite. I was feeling hot and sweaty. So I went to the bathroom. I fumbled for a washcloth, soaked it in cold water, and wiped my face. After washing up, I felt a bit better. That's when I noticed something. The shower floor was wet. They had showered before heading back to work. I wandered back into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed in a daze, the same bed my wife and her lover had just used. That thought jolted me up, and I looked around in horror. This felt like a crime scene. I had no clue what to do. Well, divorcing Rachel was a given. But beyond that, I had no idea where to start, and I still had to pick up Toby from school. What was I supposed to tell her? I stumbled out to the car, feeling like I'd been drunk for 10 days. My head throbbed, and I probably looked terrible. I wasn't in any shape to drive, but I couldn't leave Toby waiting. Suddenly, I realized she was the only person I could truly rely on. My baby was going to be all right. I had to make sure of that. As I pulled into the line of cars, I saw her standing by the school door. She walked down the sidewalk to the car, looking so beautiful it made my heart ache. Toby had her mother's dark hair and skin, almost Mediterranean, and the most striking eyes I'd ever seen. They looked dark brown like her mom's, but with streaks of gold and green. The doctor called them hazel, but I'd never seen anything quite like them. She was tall like me, with long, honey-brown legs and undeniable beauty. She tossed her backpack in the back seat and leaned in to kiss me, but froze mid-motion. "Daddy, what's wrong?" she asked. "Are you sick? Did something happen? Is Mommy okay? What's going on, Daddy?" Her voice was rising with worry, and I could hear the fear creeping in. I had to say something. "I'm fine, kitten," I said. "No one's hurt or sick. But I need to talk to you, Toby. Let's go to the park. I just need to hold you and talk for a minute, okay? No more questions until we get there, all right?" "Okay, Daddy, but you're scaring me," she said. "I know, kitten, but it's going to be okay," I told her, hoping it wasn't a lie. It only took 5 minutes to get to the park. I had pushed her on those swings 1,000 times. Rachel and I used to sit on the benches and watch her play. Those were happy days. Was my life going to be nothing but memories of better times? We walked to a bench and she took my hand, swinging her arms just like she used to as a little girl. We sat down and I struggled to find the right words. "Just tell me, Daddy," she said. "I can handle it." "Well, I'm not sure I can," I replied. I told her everything, what I had seen, what I had felt, and the tears streamed down my face. She held my hand the entire time, and when I was finished, she clung to me. "That doesn't sound good, Daddy," she said. "We need to go home and talk to Mom about it. It all depends on what she tells us. I know it looks bad, but we don't have the full story. We have to ask her." I kissed the top of her head, filled with pride. My baby girl was braver than I was. She tugged my hand and I stood up. "Do you want to go?" I asked her. Her eyes sparkled. She had just gotten her driver's license. A flicker of doubt crossed her face, but disappeared quickly. She drove us home carefully, and sure enough, Rachel's car was in the garage. Rachel greeted us at the door with hugs and kisses like everything was normal. Either she was an award-winning actress, or I had misunderstood everything. "How about takeout tonight?" she asked. "My treat." "I think we need to talk to you for a minute, Mom," Toby said. "Okay, everything all right, baby?" Rachel asked. "I don't know," Toby replied. "Let's find out." We went inside and I sat next to Toby on the couch. Rachel stayed in the ugly chair she insisted on buying. "What's wrong?" she asked. There wasn't a hint of concern on her face. "How was your day?" I asked. She gave me a puzzled look. "The usual," she said. "One of the company reps brought lunch from the onion basket. It was busy and I barely had a minute to myself. Why are you asking?" "So, you've been at the office all day?" Toby asked. "Of course," Rachel said. "What's with the questions? What's going on?" "So, you weren't here at the house this afternoon with Jerry Garner?" I asked. Her face turned pale. "No, of course not," she said. "Are you accusing me of something, Oliver?" "I saw you," I said. "What?" "You didn't see anything," she stammered. "What are you trying to do?" "He's lying, Toby. I was at work all day. You can ask Angel." "No, I don't think he's lying, Mom," Toby said. "I think you're lying. I'm not asking Angel. She'll lie for you. I think I'll call David Jones, your boss. He won't lie for you. What's his number?" "He's gone tonight," Rachel said. "I'll have him call you tomorrow. What are you two doing? Trying to trick me? You think you can just come in here and trip me up? What are you accusing me of?" She was trying to go on the offensive. "I think you've been lying to yourself," I told her. "You lied, Rachel. All three of us know it. Why did you do it?" I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what to say next. Finally, she spoke. "All right, yes, I was here. That's why I didn't want to tell you. I knew you'd grill me and accuse me of something." "No one accused you," Toby responded, "but I am now. You tried to make it seem like Dad was lying. You twisted everything to cover your own lies. What are you lying about, Mom? Are you having an affair with that idiot?" "You don't even know him," Rachel snapped. "Why call him an idiot?" "I've met him twice," Toby said. "The way he looks at me makes me want to shower. But that's not the point. Are you having an affair with him?" Rachel's eyes darted around like she was cornered. After a moment, she broke down. "I didn't want it to turn out like this," she said, her voice shaky. "I wasn't ready. Ready for what? Toby pressed. I fell in love with Jerry, she confessed, glancing at me. I'm sorry, Oliver, it just happened. We work closely and I don't know. He feels like the other half of me. We connected and I couldn't stop it. We're in love. I was going to tell you when the time was right. Once we both get divorced, we'll get married. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to find out this way. Toby, it'll be okay. You can see your dad whenever you want. Jerry has a nice house on the lake. He even has a daughter. He really likes you, Toby. He'll be so happy. Are you insane? Toby shouted. I'm not living with that idiot. He'll probably sneak into my room at night. I'll live with Dad. I won't see you anymore. How could you do this? She spun around and stormed upstairs, slamming the door. I heard the lock click. Rachel looked at me, her face pale and trembling. She'll get over it, she said quietly. Jerry's a really nice guy, Oliver. I think you'll like him. I'm sorry, but I need to be happy. Jerry makes me happy. That's all there is to it. I just stared at her, trying to process the person she had become. It felt like she had turned into someone else entirely. I wasn't going to argue. It was obvious she was lost to me. Whatever you say, Rachel, I said flatly. When are you moving out? Moving out? She asked, confused. I don't have anywhere to go, she said. Jerry's still married. We need to tell his wife first, and we both have to get divorced before we figure out what's next. No, you're moving out, I told her coldly. I'll give you 3 days. Her mouth dropped open. What are you talking about? You can't just kick me out of my own house. If anyone's leaving, it's you. You're forgetting something, I said. This is my house. I owned it before I even met you. It was paid off before we got married. It's not marital property. My name is on the deed. Yours isn't. You're moving out. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice shaky. You're just going to throw me out on the street? I don't care where you go, I said. Maybe you can find a room at the Cheating Hooker Motel, one of those places that rents by the hour. That's where you and people like you belong. Her eyes filled with tears. That hurts, Oliver, she said softly. You don't have to call me names. I didn't plan to fall in love with Jerry. It just happened. We clicked, and I realized I had to be with him. I never meant to hurt you. Oh, so you just accidentally hurt me? I said sarcastically. Like tripping and accidentally poking your eye out. My mom used to warn me about that. Now I get it. It was an accident, right? Well, that makes it all better. You don't have to be sarcastic, she said. Why can't you just accept that Jerry and I love each other? I don't know, Rachel, I replied. Maybe because this morning you told me you loved me. Now you're telling me you love him. I'm a little confused. I love you, Oliver, she said, almost pleading. I'll always love you. I'm just in love with Jerry. Oh, well, that clears it up, I said, shaking my head. You've been telling me you were in love with me every day for 18 years. I thought that's why we got married. I guess I was mistaken. Oh, no, we were in love, she insisted, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. You've got 3 days, Rachel, I said. If you're not out by then, I'll have the sheriff remove you and toss your stuff on the lawn. Please, Oliver, she begged, her voice trembling. It doesn't have to end like this. We can still be friends. Jerry wants to be your friend, too. We have Toby to think about. I told you I love you. I don't want to lose you as a friend. We've been together too long for you to just throw it all away. I stared at her. All the sadness, all the grief I'd been feeling was suddenly replaced by burning anger. You're delusional, Rachel, I said, my voice low and cold. Friends with you? With that dirtbag? No. Tell him if he ever sees me, he'd better run. As for you, you're the enemy now. I'll destroy everything you have. You've got 3 days. After that, I never want to see you again. I turned and went into the bedroom, leaving her standing there speechless. That was it for me. She followed me around, still going on about staying friends while I moved her stuff into the spare bedroom. She had more clothes in the closet than I could carry, so I just tossed them onto the bed, grabbed a pile, and took them to the spare room, hanging them in the closet. She stood there for a while, talking and watching me. When she went to hang up her clothes, I took the chance to slip out and lock the bedroom door. I heard her walking down the hall, but when she tried the knob, she gave up and walked away. A few minutes later, Toby texted, "Are you okay, Dad?" "Yes, kitten," I replied. "How about you?" "No, but I will be," she answered. "Okay, love you." "Love you too. Drive me to school in the morning? I don't want to ride with her." "CC," I crawled into bed and lay awake for hours trying to figure out my next steps. I must have fallen asleep around 3, but the phone alarm soon went off. I got up, took a shower, and called my boss. I told him I was getting a divorce and needed a few days off. He told me to take as much time as I needed and offered his condolences. I went downstairs, brewed some coffee, and had a couple of cups. I made breakfast for Toby and me. She came down on time, looking as beautiful as ever, and eagerly ate breakfast. After a while, Rachel came in, poured herself some coffee, and tried to talk to us, but we both ignored her. It was time to take Toby to school, and Rachel asked if she was ready. Toby just looked at her, then turned to me and asked, "Are you ready, Daddy?" I jingled my keys, and she grabbed her backpack. "Fine," Rachel said, her voice full of frustration. "Act like toddlers if that makes you feel better." She stormed off, grabbed her purse, threw us another glance, and left. I dropped Toby off at school, and she kissed me on the way out. I sat in the car for a moment, watching her walk into the building. I thought about my friend Dan, who had recently gone through a divorce. I decided to call him and ask about his lawyer. Dan didn't recommend his own lawyer. Instead, he suggested I use his wife's lawyer and gave me the name. I looked up the number, and when I called, a woman answered and put me on hold. After explaining my situation, she agreed to meet with me that afternoon, so I started taking steps. We had an investment, but there wasn't much I could do about it right away. However, I wasn't going to let her rack up huge credit card bills, so I called and lowered the limits on our cards to $500. Of course, this impacted me too, but I wasn't about to finance her affair. The meeting with Elizabeth Baxter didn't get off to a great start. She had some assumptions I had to clear up before we could even begin. She assumed I was leaving Rachel for someone else. "You've got it wrong," I told her. "Rachel is having an affair with a coworker. He's married, and they're both planning to divorce and marry each other." "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't represent people who leave for someone else. I can't live with myself if I do." "I get it," I replied. "We have a daughter. I want to minimize the damage. Do you think I could get custody of her?" "It's possible," she said. "In theory, custody can go to either parent, but in practice, it's harder for fathers, especially with daughters. How old is she? And does she want to stay with you?" "She's 15, and yes, she wants to stay with me," I answered. "That's a big plus," she said. "In this state, children over 14 can choose which parent to live with, and their wishes are heavily considered. If she were younger, your chances would be slim. But since she's 15 and wants to stay with you, that will work in your favor for the custody agreement." "Just do your best," I told her. As I drove home, I kept wondering what my next steps should be. I knew I had to do something, but it had to be legal. Getting arrested would mean losing Toby, and that was not an option. I needed a plan. Burning down houses? Well, you have to make sure it's not your own. This was going to take careful thought. I suspected Jerry's wife was as clueless as I had been, so the first step would be letting her know. I needed to make a list. First, I'd inform Rachel's parents. They loved me and adored Toby, so they should hear the truth first. But how would I go about that? Letting our friends know was also a priority. I figured I could stir up quite a storm on social media. That was the first thing on my list. She had a Facebook account for our family, so I played around with it, used Messenger, and pieced things together. I searched online and found that Jerry's wife had done the same digging. I took screenshots of a few pictures and posted on Rachel's page, announcing that we were getting divorced and that she had found her soulmate in Jerry, even including his picture. I changed my password and logged out. It felt satisfying. I wondered how long it would take before her friends and family bombarded her phone and Facebook page. I hoped Jerry's wife would understand what was happening. I didn't know her, and I felt bad for the chaos this would bring into her life. But if she was like me, she deserved to know the truth. I called my mom, and the conversation went about as poorly as I expected. After the initial shock, she just said she'd tell Dad and that they were there for me if I needed anything. I figured I'd let Rachel break the news to her parents herself. We were close, and I didn't want to be the reason for any estrangement. Besides, I wasn't sure how to tell them anyway. Somehow, "Your daughter is a cheating strumpet," didn't feel like the right message. They'd probably shoot the messenger. It didn't take long for everything to unravel. Around 2 in the afternoon, Rachel's name popped up on my phone. I answered, and she was livid. "You a hole!" Her rage gave me a bit of satisfaction. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you? I know you blocked me on Facebook. Take that crap down. Jerry's wife doesn't know yet. My friends are blowing up my phone asking what's going on. My parents know. I'm telling you, Oliver, clean this up." "No, Rachel, you don't get to boss me around," I replied. "What are you, 5 years old? Take it down, Oliver. I'm serious. You should be happy, I said. Now everyone knows about you and your soulmate. Are you ashamed people know you're a cheating strumpet? I don't, she began, but then stopped, realizing how absurd her denial would sound. Oliver, please take it down. It wasn't supposed to go like this. You gave up control when you cheated, Rachel. You lost any right to my respect or courtesy. I told you, you're the enemy now. Deal with it. I hung up. When the phone buzzed again, I ignored it. It was time to pick up Toby. When I told her about my conversation with Elizabeth Baxter, she was happy to hear she'd likely stay with me, but overall, she wasn't pleased. What's wrong with Mom, Dad? She asked. You know I love her, but she's always been a bit immature. I've always felt like I had two kids. Her and you. Didn't you ever notice that? Not really, but now that you mention it, yeah. She's impulsive, but I never thought she'd do something like this. Well, we'll figure it out, she said. Dad, I don't ever want to be in the same house with that guy unless you're there. I don't care what you have to do, just make sure it doesn't happen, okay? I promise, I said. We picked up pizza on the way home, and I was enjoying my second slice when my phone buzzed. It was Bob, Rachel's dad. I wasn't expecting the call. I told Toby, and she said to put it on speaker. Bob got straight to the point. Oliver, I don't know what's going on, but Rachel came over last night asking to stay with us. Care to explain why? Bob asked. Did you ask her? I replied. She said you kicked her out, Bob answered. Well, yeah, but, I began. Did she tell you why? Bob interrupted. No, she said she'd explain later but wasn't ready yet, Bob said. Don't you want to wait for her explanation? I asked. Can't you just tell me? Bob pressed. She's been having an affair with Jerry Garner, a guy from her work. They're both planning to divorce and get married, I explained. What? That's insane, Oliver. How do you know that? Bob asked, shocked. I caught them together yesterday, I said. And she admitted it. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand? Bob questioned. Toby suddenly chimed in. Hey, Grandpa, I'm on speaker. There's no misunderstanding. I was there when she told Dad. I'm so sorry, Grandpa. I love you. Her voice broke as she started crying. Bob's voice cracked when he responded. Don't cry, sweetheart. Please be strong. We love you, and Grandma does too. I'll try to talk some sense into your mom. Oliver, are you still there? Yeah. I'm really sorry, Bob, but don't worry about Toby. You'll always be her grandparents. That won't change. I know you love Rachel, and you'll do what you need to do. I have a lot of respect for you. I just hope you don't end up hating me when this is all over, I said, trying to reassure him. That's never going to happen, Bob said firmly. I'll figure out what's going on. Call me if you need anything. It went better than I'd feared. Life happens, and you just do your best. I won't go into detail about the divorce process. Most people know how it goes. It was long, painful, and never got easier. Rachel was delusional, thinking she'd get custody of Toby. That didn't happen. Miss Baxter was as good as her reputation. I got full custody because Toby wanted to live with me. After a private meeting with Toby, the judge ruled that Rachel would get unlimited visitation, but Toby wouldn't be left alone with her and Jerry Garner. In any case, it didn't matter anymore. His wife divorced him, but it seemed the whole soulmate thing was more of an exaggeration, at least on his part. Just 2 weeks after I discovered the affair, Jerry was already looking for his next conquest. All their grand plans disappeared like fog on a sunny day. The divorce took 7 months to finalize. Surprisingly, Rachel changed her mind. During the second court hearing, she asked the judge to schedule counseling. Neither Miss Baxter nor I had anything to say, and the judge ordered it. We were assigned 8 to 10 sessions. Our counselors were an odd pair of old hippies. In the first session, they asked us to state our goals. Rachel's goals were long and complicated. She seemed to believe I should understand that her happiness was the universe's main purpose, and that she desired only good things. My goal was much simpler. What's your purpose for these sessions, Mr. Berryman? The counselor asked. My goal is to finish them, I said. The counselor frowned. Mr. Berryman, do you really not want to address the issues that led your marriage to this point? I'm sorry, Mr. Rodman, but it wasn't my issues that caused this. I have no interest in working on them. I'm perfectly fine with my problems and plan to die with them. Rachel and Mr. Rodman were both horrified. Rachel spoke up quickly. Oliver, how do you expect things to get back to normal if you won't even talk about it? I don't want to, I said. Let me make this clear to both of you. I'm not here to fix anything or work on any problems. I'm here because the court ordered it. I'll do what I need to do, then we'll go back to court and finalize the divorce. That's my plan. Do you realize if I report to the judge that you're refusing to cooperate, you could be held in contempt of court? Mr. Rodman said. I don't know about that, I replied. You mean if you lie to the judge? These sessions are recorded. I'm sure my lawyer would love to subpoena you for perjury. I'm here. I'm doing what you ask. You asked for my goals, and I gave them. I'm cooperating. He blushed. The judge likely expected you to work through your issues. I'm not responsible for the judge's expectations, I said. Only for my own. He tried to make it difficult by assigning tasks that required me to spend more time with Rachel, and she worked hard to wear me down. Oliver, what would it take for you to give up the divorce and work things out? She asked. An act of God, I said. She waited for an explanation, but I said nothing. What do you mean by an act of God? She finally asked. Well, if you can turn back time and avoid getting involved with Jerry, that would work. Otherwise, only God has that kind of power. Do you have some divine powers I don't know about, Rachel, besides your ability to attract other men? We continued with the boring exercises and mantras, and finally it was over. Back in court, the judge asked if we had made any progress. Your Honor, there is no chance my client will remain married to his wife, Elizabeth Baxter said. We'd like to finalize the divorce as soon as possible. This process has gone on long enough. The judge must have agreed because the final order arrived in the mail 10 days later. Toby saw her mother often since she spent a lot of time with her grandparents. Occasionally, Rachel would plan something for the two of them, but their relationship was never the same. Toby spent most of her time with her friends, especially a petite blonde named Sabrina, who was practically part of our family. Sabrina was as sweet as she was cute, and I enjoyed having her around. They even started including me in their activities. One of their favorite activities was water skiing. We had a boat, and once summer vacation started, we'd go to a nearby lake on Saturdays. One Monday, they asked if we could spend the whole weekend at the lake, take the RV, and stay until Sunday evening. Since my schedule was free, I agreed. The girls spent the week planning, and by Thursday, we packed everything they wanted. On Friday afternoon, a new red Jeep Cherokee pulled into the driveway, and Sabrina jumped out. An almost identical woman stepped out from the driver's side, and Toby rushed to hug her. Sabrina and Toby led the nervous-looking woman over to me. Dad, Toby said, this is Julie. She's Sabrina's mom. I know you haven't met her yet. Julie extended her hand. Hi, Oliver. The girls have told me so much about you. Thanks for inviting me along this weekend. Honestly, I was getting a little jealous that they were spending so much time with you and not me. She smiled playfully, and I instantly understood why Sabrina was such a charming little minx. I glanced at Toby, and she gave me a fierce look. My knees felt weak, and I knew when to surrender. The trembling got worse when I looked at Sabrina, who raised an eyebrow at me. This is going to be great, I said to Julie, pulling myself together. We always have a good time. Julie wasn't oblivious. She shifted her gaze from me to the girls, then back to me. Oh my God, she said, realizing what was happening. You didn't know, did you? The girls? Before she could say anything else, she was engulfed in hugs, kisses, and pleas from Toby and Sabrina. Please, Mom, don't worry about it. We're going to have so much fun, Sabrina said. It's okay, Julie. Daddy's going to love you as much as I do, and he's a great guy, Toby added with a mischievous grin. Julie disentangled herself from the girls and gave me an apologetic look. You two go sit on the porch. I need to talk to Oliver, she said, her tone firm but kind. The girls giggled as they obeyed, heading to the porch. I'm so sorry, Oliver, Julie said, her face flushing red. I had no idea they were trying to set us up. I'll take Sabrina home. She'll be grounded for a month. This is so embarrassing. She looked so small and mortified that I stepped forward and hugged her. She tensed at first, but then relaxed into the embrace. Yeah, it's embarrassing, I admitted. But they're just kids. We both know they're trying to look out for us. Let me guess. You're single? She laughed softly and looked up at me with her big brown eyes. Yes, I am. Well, that's the point, right? You're packed, you've got the weekend free, and the lake will be amazing. I'm not a bad guy, as you've probably heard from Toby. Let's just go along with the girls' little plan. It'll be fun, and we can mess with them a bit too. What do you say? She hesitated for a second, glanced at the girls' eager faces, then smiled. Okay, let's go. I gave the girls a thumbs up, and they cheered, running toward us. I stopped them before they got too excited, grabbing each by the arm. Girls, that wasn't very nice, I said, trying to keep a straight face. Sabrina growled in her best Skeletor voice. I am not cute. We all burst out laughing and the tension broke. They were too sweet to stay mad at. "We know what you're up to," I said. "Stop it. Seriously, you can't just mess with people's lives like that." "Yeah, but I love Jules, and I didn't know how to introduce you to her," Toby said, pouting. "Well, you could have just told me," I said. She looked a little sad, so I softened. "It's okay, kitten. Just don't do it again, all right?" She brightened up immediately, and Sabrina tugged on my hand. "Let's go. I can't wait. It's going to be disgusting, Oliver." "You'll see." Julie laughed, a sound that lightened the mood. "Sounds like it's going to be awesome, Ollie," she teased. "But Sab's right. We're burning daylight." We loaded the bags into the Jeep and set off. After securing the boat and picking up propane, we hit the road. It was only about a half-hour drive to the lake. Julie sat up front with me while the girls sat in the back, playing awful music through their Bluetooth speakers. As we drove, Julie and I got to know each other better. It turned out she owned an insurance company and worked as a financial planner. I couldn't help but glance at her now and then. She was cute, petite, with light blonde hair that cascaded down to her waist. She looked younger than me, though she was only 3 years younger. Her large brown eyes, high cheekbones, and heart-shaped face made her look even more youthful. She was slender, dressed in jeans and a button-up top, with a tan that hinted at outdoor adventures. I wondered if Sabrina would look like her mom when she grew up. When we arrived at the lake, I set up the boat while the girls changed into their swimsuits. Julie came out last, and I nearly dropped what I was holding. She was stunning, slender but curvy in all the right places, with the same confident energy as her daughter, but with a maturity that made her even more attractive. She caught me staring and gave me a playful wink. "Done?" she asked, sparing me the awkwardness with a smile. "For now," I replied, laughing. "You know what you look like, Julie. I'm only human." We spent the next few hours water skiing. Julie turned out to be incredible at it, even steering the boat like a pro while I took my turn skiing. I wasn't as good as her or the girls, but I held my own. After skiing, we headed back to camp where the girls wanted to cook outside. We built a fire, grilled hot dogs, fried potatoes and onions, and opened a can of pork and beans. Camp food always tasted better, and the evening was perfect. We sat around the picnic table, talking as if we'd known each other for years. Julie, now Jules, as the girls called her, fit right in. She started calling me Ollie, and the girls kept dropping hints that Jules was single. Finally, I asked, "So why hasn't some guy snatched you up yet, Jules? You're gorgeous, funny, smart, and you've got your own business." For a moment, she was quiet. Then she took a deep breath. "Well, the main reason is Sabrina," she said. "I was young and foolish, Ollie. I was in college and thought I'd found the love of my life. A week before graduation, I found out I was pregnant. I wasn't too upset because we had talked about getting married, but 3 days after I told Brad, I learned he'd been cheating on me. I dumped him and never looked back. When Sab was born, I didn't have time for a social life. By the time I could think about dating again, I realized I had this amazing gift, and I couldn't do anything without considering her." "I get it," I said. "I feel the same way about Toby. She's everything to me, especially over the past 18 months. She's kept me grounded." Julie placed her hand on mine. "I know," she said softly. "She tells Sab and me everything. I'm really sorry, Ollie." "Yeah," I sighed. "Life can be tough sometimes." We both sat in comfortable silence, looking up to see 2 pairs of approving eyes watching us from under the canopy. Toby and Sabrina were whispering and giggling, clearly pleased with themselves. "I love your daughter," I told Julie. "She feels like part of my family with how much time she spends here." "She loves you too," Julie said, her voice catching. "She told me the other day that you're like the father she never had." Her big brown eyes grew teary, and a tear slid down her cheek. I gently wiped it away with my finger. "She's a great girl," I said, "and her mom is an incredible woman for raising her so well, especially on her own." Julie smiled, then stood up and kissed me on the cheek before heading back to the girls. We had a wonderful weekend, and when it was time for them to leave, I walked Julie to her car. Just before she got in, I tapped on her window. "Jules, would you be interested in going out with me next Friday?" I asked, feeling a bit nervous. Sabrina squealed from inside the car, and Julie smiled brightly. "What time?" she asked. 6, I suggested. "We'll have dinner and find something fun to do." "Sounds great," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek before driving off. When I got home, Toby was waiting for me. "Did you ask her out? Did you kiss her?" she asked, grinning. I wrapped my arms around her and gave her a playful pat. "That's for me to know, and none of your business," she squealed, and I heard Sabrina's echo from the car. "I knew it. She's perfect for you, Daddy. I love her so much. and Sabs is like a sister to me. I shrugged. What happens, happens, Toby. You can't force it. Stop trying to be a matchmaker. She snuggled up against me. I know, Daddy, but if I didn't do something, you'd never make a move. Not that I didn't like being the only girl in your life. I laughed. You'll always have a special place in my heart that no one can take. You're my baby, and that'll never change. She purred contentedly, snuggled against me for a moment, and then went off to handle her own business. Our first date went well. I invited her to play racquetball. She was new to it, but she had played tennis before, so the mechanics were similar. Once she got the hang of the rules and hitting the ball off the walls, she did great. It didn't hurt that she was a natural athlete, fast and quick to change direction, which her petite size helped with. After our game, we sat down near the court, relaxed, and had a drink. Julie grabbed her phone. Let's take a picture for the kids, she said. We posed with our rackets and goggles, snapped the photo, and sent it to them. They responded immediately, and it became a nice memory. Afterward, we both showered, and I took her out to dinner. We found a great Italian place and stuffed ourselves. Sitting in the booth, finishing our wine, Jules leaned into me, and it felt natural to put my arm around her. She nestled closer, smiling, and I realized how sweet she truly was, a quality that wouldn't fade with time. When we pulled up to her house, she leaned toward me expectantly. I realized she wanted me to kiss her, so I did. I wanted it as much as she did, maybe more. The kiss was long and wonderful. Her lips were soft and sweet, tasting of wine and cherry chapstick. As we pulled apart, I noticed the drapes moving. I think we've got an audience, I said. She giggled, sounding just like her daughter. Or maybe her daughter was like her. I'm not surprised. You know they're trying to set us up, right? Is that okay with you? I asked. She blushed. Yes. I like everything I've learned about you, Ollie. Same here, I said. We'd better go inside before they tear the curtains down. We met every Friday for 4 months, getting closer and closer, and I wanted our relationship to grow. I didn't want to pressure her, but some of our dates were getting pretty heated toward the end. At the same time, I found that I enjoyed her friendship almost as much as I liked having her as my girlfriend. We were constantly chatting on the phone, texting funny things, or just a few words throughout the day. If I saw or heard something I knew would make Jules laugh, I had to share it with her. We became very close, knowing everything about each other's lives. We started having dinner together every Tuesday, all of us, playing games and just hanging out. And I was growing as fond of Sabrina as I was of her mom. They were so alike, if you knew one, you pretty much knew the other. The differences were small, but only emphasized how similar they really were. Both were utterly adorable. Life was great, except for Rachel's constant presence. She was still part of Toby's life, which meant she was still part of mine. I wanted nothing to do with her, and seeing her irritated me. Every time she came to pick up Toby, or when I dropped her off at her grandparents', Rachel would try to talk to me. She was still living with them, along with Jerry. She had lost her job at the clinic and was now working at another clinic across town. If she annoyed me too much, I'd ask if she'd heard from Jerry, which shut her up quickly. How long is it going to take for you to forgive me? She asked one time. Forgive you for what? I replied. As far as I know, you don't think you've done anything wrong. I've never heard... Forgive me, Oliver, I was wrong. I'm sorry for trying to make Toby think you were a liar. I'm sorry for trying to take her away from you, for trying to screw you in the divorce. And most of all, I've never heard. I'm sorry I cheated behind your back. I didn't hear it that time either. She just couldn't take responsibility for her actions. I wasn't even sure what forgiveness would mean in this situation. I'd come to terms with it and calmed down. I hadn't forgotten, but I wasn't going to waste energy being bitter. People have the right to make mistakes. They can divorce you, dump you, end friendships. It's their choice. You just accept it and move forward. People do crappy things every day. At one point, I wanted to punish her and Jerry, but I realized quickly that their punishment was simply being who they were. They had to live with themselves, while I planned to live with myself. That meant leaving the lies and betrayal in the past and focusing on living my best life. Rachel was miserable, and as for Jerry, I wished him all the misfortune in the world, but it wouldn't come from me. I'd let karma or the universe take care of them. Rachel got even more upset when she found out I was dating Jules. One time, after I dropped Toby off at her grandparents' house, Rachel stopped me as I was getting into my car. I heard you're dating the mother of one of Toby's friends, she said. I just stared at her. Is it true? She pressed. That's none of your business, I told her. Like hell it isn't. she snapped. I'm your wife. I have a right to know. You have a right to nothing, I replied. You're not my wife anymore. You found your soulmate, remember? And it wasn't me. Then came the divorce. My business isn't yours anymore, and yours isn't mine. Stay out of it, Rachel. I left fuming. That woman just couldn't leave things alone. I told Toby what had happened, and she was just as angry as I was. From then on, I arranged for her grandparents, Bob or Cindy, to pick her up. That took away a major source of stress for me. On the 7-month anniversary of our lake trip, I asked Jules out for a special date. We went to a nice restaurant and then to a club. She didn't drink much, usually just a beer or a single drink, but that night, she had 2. I raised an eyebrow when she ordered the second one, and she laughed. Yeah, I'm feeling wild and crazy today, huh? You're perfect, just like always, I told her. Do you really think so, Ollie? She asked, tilting her head. Because I think you're pretty perfect, too. If I'm so perfect, why haven't you asked me to spend the night? She teased. I must have looked shocked because she laughed. What? Didn't you even think about it? I gathered my thoughts. Yeah, Jules. I've been thinking about it since the first day I saw you on the boat in that bikini. But as we started dating, I realized you were special, and I didn't want to push you or scare you off. You won't scare me off, she said. I told the girls not to wait up. Really? Then what are we still doing here? I asked, excited. Oh my God, Jules, let's get out of here. Do you want to spend the night with me? She blushed, took my hand, and let me help her up. More than anything else in the world right now. She practically cuddled up to me as we got out of the car, holding onto my arm the whole way home with her head resting on my shoulder. When we pulled into the garage, I let her out, and she stayed close to my side all the way to the bedroom. We fell asleep in each other's arms, making love twice during the night, once on my initiative, once on hers. I woke up the next morning on my back with her half lying on top of me, her hair spread over both of us, and her cheek resting on my shoulder. I gently played with her hair, watching her sleep until she finally opened her eyes. My place is here, Ollie. I know, I replied. Would you like to wake up here every morning? She asked, looking at me. You mean living together? No, honey, well, yes, but what I mean is, will you marry me, Julie Barnes? She raised her small left hand between us, wiggling her fingers. Ooh, she said. Something seems to be missing. Hold that thought, I said, starting to get out of bed. I'll hold that thought, she replied, but I can't hold anything else. I need to pee so badly. I laughed. Go ahead, I'll meet you back here. She scurried off, and I went down to my office, remembering to use the bathroom along the way. I grabbed what I needed from the safe and returned to find her curled up under the blanket. I climbed back into bed, took her left hand again, and looked into her eyes, seeing only love. Okay, Julie, will you marry me? I asked, sliding the ring onto her finger. It was a bit too big and would need to be resized, but for the moment, it was perfect. She took the ring, examined it, and smiled. It's beautiful, she said. It looks antique. Where did you get it? When did you buy it? Remember when I told you I was going to that auction about a month ago? I asked. Yes, I remember. They were auctioning off the estate, right? Exactly. I didn't mention it at the time, but I saw this ring in the catalog. I went there specifically to buy it and ask you to marry me. It was made in England around 1810 for the Duchess of Avon. It has a long history. Do you like it? I love it, she said. It's the most beautiful ring I've ever seen. So, are you going to answer my question? I asked with a smile. What? Oh, yes, Oliver. Yes, I'll marry you. Oh my God, yes. I laughed and pulled her into a tight hug. It felt like a weight had finally been lifted. The long road I had walked, filled with anger, betrayal, and loss, was finally behind me. Rachel was out of my life, and though the scars would always remain, I had moved forward. I had found someone who brought joy, laughter, and meaning back into my days. Jules was my partner in every sense of the word, and together we were building a future, one filled with warmth and love. As we started planning our wedding, life felt lighter. Toby was thriving, Sabrina was like a second daughter to me, and Jules made me believe in happiness again. It wasn't just about finding love, but rediscovering a part of myself that had been buried under years of resentment and disappointment. The lake trips became a regular part of our lives, and every time we went, I found myself more at peace. The laughter, the quiet moments, the family we had formed, they were all reminders that life, no matter how painful it might seem at times, always had the potential to offer something beautiful on the other side. Rachel had her life, and I had mine. For the first time in a long time, I could say with certainty, I was happy. Truly happy. The darkness had passed, and now, in its place, was a life I wanted to live. A life I chose, with the people who mattered most. And that was enough.